Do you want to have early spring flowers? If so, then now's the time to actually start planting those seeds. There are some flowers, depending on your zone, that you will be able to start now in July and overwinter. Last year, I experimented with overwintering snapdragons, feverfew, and yarrow. The yarrow and feverfew I wasn't as worried about in my zone 6A, and the snapdragons I wasn't sure what to expect. If you're new here, my name is Lyle, and I own a microflower farm in Western Massachusetts. Last year, my snapdragon experiment went relatively well. The mishap or loss of snapdragons was more on my part for not covering them after the snow had melted and we had some extreme cold temperatures. So user error. But this year I am more prepared with some better infrastructure to make sure that they are covered when there is not snow insulating them. So I wanted to take some time today to just kind of go over what seeds I'm starting now, which ones I'm adding to my plantings for this fall, and some just other tips and tricks that I've learned from my experiment last year. If you don't have a copy of Lisa Mason Ziegler's Cool Flowers, I highly recommend it. It's an awesome reference book. I look at it all the time. There's lots of good information about the different flowers that you can overwinter. There is a little chart in the back for just a quick reference as to which flowers will winter over in what zones. And then she also has another book called The Cut Flower Handbook that I also really enjoy. You'll learn that I love my books for reference. I look at them all the time. It's kind of what I read before bed. But this book, Cut Flower Handbook, is also great. It doesn't necessarily go into the same detail like the Cool Flower book as to which ones would necessarily can be grown in what zone, but it tells the temperature that flower can go down to. And it's also divided into, the book's actually divided into a whole section on cool flowers, kind of a blue on the side, and there's a whole section on warm annuals. So that's kind of nice, but it tells you what temperature, like I said, they can go down to. So that's a nice reference. So if you know that zone 6A, I think our range is like -10 at the coldest, I can look and see what can that flower handle. And it's just a good jumping off point to maybe trial or see if it might overwinter in our zone, maybe without protection or maybe with some protection like some agribon. So I want to start with the snapdragons because those are what I am most probably excited about for the moment. They were incredible this spring, the ones that survived. They were really tall, they had great stems, and they were just so nice to have early in the season. And I planted a lavender color that I really liked, and I can't remember if it was Amiens lavender or Maryland lavender, but they're both a group 1-2 snapdragon, and I'm going to be planting both this year. The group 1-2s are the ones that I'm looking at planting because they can handle a little bit colder temperatures as well as the shorter day length time. Some of the other varieties I'm growing, I'll go through the list here. There's Bridal Pink, which I have also grew this year and I loved it. There is the Chantilly Light Salmon. I grow this the past few years and then I'm always on the fence about it. And then I kind of start using it and I really enjoy it. It usually comes out a little bit more orangey yellow for me, but it is a really nice one. Costa Rose, very vivid, beautiful. And then one of their new ones, Johnny, and I get all my seeds, I should say, from Johnny Seeds. I just really like their customer service. They have great germination rates. But it is Snapstar Champagne, and I'm really excited for this one. It looks really, really pretty. So those are the ones I'm starting for my winter sowing or overwintering right now. So the goal is, if you're not familiar with the cool flower process, you're going to start your seeds about now, depending on how long they take to get to maturity. So for example, most of these, actually all of these snapdragons are 100 to 110 days. So by starting them now, they're going to be little seedlings when I go to plant them out at the end of August or early September. I want them to root for about anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks, ideally, to get established so they could handle being overwintered. Now, if there's anything that takes less time to grow, I might wait a little bit to start my seeds, but I'm looking at everything here. Everything that I'm starting today needs at least 100 days to reach maturity. So they'll never actually reach maturity before I get them planted out. The goal is to get them to a nice, decent seedling transplant size so they can then get established and then overwinter and then hit the ground running come the spring. Okay, so moving on, after the snapdragons, the yarrow. So I'm starting more yarrow. Last year, like I said, it overwintered just fine. It's a perennial, so that wasn't really a shocker. But it was really nice because I had some yarrow going into its second year, and the fall planted yarrow is now in its first year. So it was a little bit staggered behind my previous 1-year-old yarrow. So I've kind of read that it's nice to do a little succession every year. So I am going to start some more yarrow. The color I love the most is the summer berries, so I'm definitely going to start more of that. But I also had some flower burst red shades, and I'm going to start a few of those as well because it's just a nice one to have earlier in the season. It actually came in really handy for the 4th of July for those red, white, and blue bouquets. It was really nice for, and it dries really well. So I harvested a lot of that to dry to maybe use in some wreaths later this winter and just like dried flower bouquets, which is another great thing that you can do with yarrow. And then for the feverfew, I have, let's see here, I should mention yarrow is about 120 to 130 days to maturity. So they're going to be pretty small transplants when you get them out, but they're pretty strong. And then for the feverfew, I have 2 kinds. They say they're a tender perennial, so I wasn't really expecting to have a second year feverfew this year, but it was a really nice surprise for me considering how cold it was that I did get flowers from my second year feverfew, plus a little bit of a later succession from my new feverfew that I fall planted in 2025. So I'm going to do the same thing this year because maybe my one that's a year old now or in its second year might not make it this winter. And I had about 10 feet, a 10-foot row that was about 4 feet wide worth of feverfew, and it was wonderful. It smelled incredible. I was able to sell a lot of it in my bouquets, and I also am drying a lot of it. So the 2 that I grew were Magic Single and Tetra White. They both need about 100 to 110 days to maturity. I do have some other seeds that I just ordered from Johnny's, and they should be here later this week. So I'll have to I'll have to get those seeded once they arrive. And at the end of this, I'll do a little reveal of what I ordered because there's probably more seeds than I can actually fit in my garden, but I couldn't resist. And then one new one to me this year was Campanula. So I spring planted some Campanula, only, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 plants because I had a really hard time getting it to germinate. And it actually turned out to be okay. It didn't have the tallest stems, but it was definitely tall enough for my bouquets. And I'm actually about ready to rip it out because I've heard the second flush isn't great. In our zone, I've heard that Campanula can overwinter relatively well as long as it's maybe covered with some agribon once it gets really, really cold. So I'm going to give it a try, and I have a few different types or colors here. So I have the Champion Deep Blue, and then I have Champion Rose, which I grew this year as well and loved, and then Champion White. So I am going to do all 3 of those colors and cross my fingers that they make it. They take about 120 to 150 days to maturity, which means they're going to be a pretty small seedling as I'm just starting them now when I go to transplant them out at the end of August, early September. The other one, which I've grown for a while now, but I've never overwintered it, and apparently it is one of the best ones for overwintering in our zones. It's really cold tolerant, and that's Dianthus or Sweet William. And I have a few different colors that I am going to grow. And when I was doing some digging into the varieties, there's some varieties that might do a little bit better being overwintered than the others. Like I said, I get all my seeds from Johnny's, so their main series are the Amazon series and the Sweet series. So when I was probably listening to a podcast, but I had heard that the Sweet series actually can handle a little bit more cold and a little bit shorter day length. So my plan for this year is to start just the sweet series, and I have another one called Barcelona, and I'm going to start those and overwinter them, and that will kind of act as my first succession. And then my backup plan is to do the Amazon series as my spring succession. So for the sweet series, I have sweet white. I think I have another one coming. It's not in here yet, and I'll tell you what that is once I open up my Johnny's order. And then the Barcelona pink. I think the other one I ordered from Johnny's is a new variety. It's kind of a mixed pink. I'll make sure I can put an image up. But I'm pretty excited about that one because having the Sweet William or Dianthus early in the spring is just a really nice addition to bouquets. The Amazon series, I've never grown before, and this is my first year growing it, and I have the Amazon Neon Cherry right now planted out, and I am loving it. The stems are so tall. They actually got so much taller than the Sweet series because, again, they kind of like it a little bit warmer and a little bit longer day length, so they really did well as a spring planting of these. So I'm not going to change that. I should also add that for the snapdragons, and yeah, I think it's just the snapdragons. I'm looking at my containers over here. I'm also going to do a spring succession, an early spring succession of those, just kind of as a security blanket backup plan, so to speak. I just don't want to, if I happen to kill all of my snapdragons, it's a really cold winter again, anything like that, I just want to make sure I do have some snaps. So, and also if the overwinter ones make it, and then I do a spring succession, I do get those kind of 2 waves of snapdragons to get me through to probably about now-ish, which is really nice. And then the Campanula, I might do 2 successions, but if I do, I will probably start that second succession much earlier in the spring than I did this year because, like I said, I got pretty short stems and they just took a really long time to get going. So I'm still on the fence if I'm going to do a second succession of those in the spring, but it's a possibility. Okay, what is new that I'm adding this year? There's quite a few things. So let me grab my list and I'll go through that with you. So the first 2 things I ordered were delphinium. One is candle light blue shades, and the other one is Magic Fountains Sky Blue with white. It's called Magic Fountains Sky Blue White Bee delphinium seed. They both look really similar. They're both in the light blue. It'll be interesting to see how they differ. I have tried growing delphinium in the past, and I didn't have a good experience with it germinating. So if you guys have any tips or tricks on that, let me know. And these are perennials, so my plan for this is to not take up bed space, but probably put them somewhere in my landscape where they're gonna look nice and I can also cut from them. The next thing that I have is larkspur. So I did grow this a few years ago and I just wasn't impressed with it, and now I know why. It really likes to be cold to get a good start to it, and I think I had started it too late in the spring. So I'm going to try to overwinter it here. It should be cold hardy for our zone 6A, and I have some seeds left over from a couple years ago. I don't know if they'll germinate or not, but I'm going to give them a try because I have them. So I have QIS Larkspur Formula Mix and Fancy Smoky Eyes. So those I just have some seeds of. I'm going to give a try. And then I got QIS Carmine, which is a really pretty pink, and QIS White. So I was just trying to keep it simple with the larkspur as far as colors go. And then the Dianthus, or the Sweet William that I got, that I was talking about earlier, was the Sweet, it's a new one, Sweet Cherry Blossom Magic. And I'm really excited for that one. It's a kind of looks like it goes from a white light pink to a darker pink. Kind of has some dimension to it, so I'm excited to see what that will look like. I did get another type of feverfew. It's the Sunny Ball feverfew. Curious to see what that will look like in the spring. It's pretty yellow, which is not a color I'm usually drawn to, but it was really, really cute. And I think it would also make a great dried flower. And I know I keep talking about dried flowers. I'll have to go into another video about that someday, but it's something that I've been experimenting with my extra flowers. And then, I don't know what I was thinking, but I bought some foxglove this year, 2 plants, and I was in love with it. So I decided I'm gonna grow some foxglove. I have no idea where I'm gonna put this plant, but I got 3 different types. So I got Camelot Rose, a Dalmatian Peach, and a Camelot Lavender. And all of these are a first year blooming. And I think by getting them started now and having them overwinter, I should have some really, really nice blooms for next season. And then I'll rip them out and we'll do the process all over again. So that is a lot more seeds and plants that I honestly probably have space for. And that is the biggest issue, I think, with overwintering cool flowers when you have a limited amount of space. So we have our main garden area, just to give you an idea. We have 3 rows in our main garden area. They are 4 foot wide and about 60 feet long. The middle row right now is full of dahlias. So there is no way I'm ripping out all my dahlias at the end of August, early September to be able to plant these seeds into that space. So you need to have space prepped and ready to plant into, sitting empty for the end of August, early September. And a lot of my flowers, I'm like, I don't really want to rip them out. I kind of need them for markets, my farm stand, any other events I have going on, etc. So it's really hard because it's a little bit of a dance, a shuffle to figure out what can I rip out, what do I not plant another succession of, and save that space just sitting there, not producing anything, potentially for a month or a couple weeks until I can get these transplants into the ground in order to have a better spring production. It's hard because in my mind, I want all the flowers I can have for end of August, September, as that is a really busy month, especially at the farmer's market. I also have my dahlia CSA. So, you know, having extra fillers to go with my dahlias, it's not a straight dahlia bunch that I do, is really nice. So giving up space to plant these hurts a little bit, but I think the payoff will be come spring. When people are so hungry for flowers, I'm going to have a really nice selection for spring of 2027. Yeah, it's a little wild. I'm here in July. What is today? July 6th, I think? July 6th. And I'm already thinking about spring of next year. So if you are interested in overwintering flowers in your zone, I think if you're not any colder than 6A, I think all of these should work with no coverage or minimal coverage on them, like an Agribon. I tend to use an Agribon 19 for extra protection when it gets really cold, especially when they're young. Like I said, on the snapdragons, my mistake was not covering them after our snow melt went away and it got really, really cold again. So this year, I'll be better. I'm gonna do better and cover them because it was so nice to have those snapdragons early on. So I hope that gives you some useful information that if you want to start planning for your garden for 2027 already, you can do that now. If you are growing anything different than what I'm growing for kind of a zone 6A, 6B, let me know. I'd love to hear what else you have maybe grown successfully in our climate. And if you have any other questions, let me know. If you haven't already, please hit like and subscribe. And next time, I'm going to be talking about pinching dahlias and doing a little walkthrough of our dahlia area where we have about 600 planted. So hope to see you then.